Our next speaker is a Blue Jay, Tony Dahbura. Tony has a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science from Johns Hopkins University. And while he was getting a bachelor's degree, he also played baseball for Johns Hopkins. But he's not going to talk about computer science today, right? Okay, after 15 years in industry, he returned to Maryland. He returned to Maryland to join the computer science faculty at Johns Hopkins and also to direct an institute on information security. And along the way, he became a part owner of the Hagerstown Suns, which is going to be the topic of this conversation today. I just want to add two other things. He's also known as Dr. Numeros on the Baltimore Fox broadcast of the Spanish language game of the week. And the other thing is he directs about 20 very, very bright Hopkins students on sports analytics. In fact, 4 of them presented posters at the recent Baltimore convention. So let's have a warm Bay Road welcome for Tony Dahbura.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the nice introduction. As John said, I'm not going to be talking about AI, cybersecurity, computer science, a lot of the things in my day job. Although it may be interesting, but maybe not. I'm going to talk about a wonderful experience, perhaps, I would say one of the top 2 most wonderful experiences of my life. Something that I carry with me very closely to this day. And that is my association, my weird, wonderful association with the Hagerstown Suns minor league baseball team. So in order to get to that point, I have to give you a little bit of context. I was born in Maryland, but when I was 7 years old, my family moved to El Salvador in Central America for a business opportunity. And when I was about 11 years old, a new family moved down to El Salvador. There was a kid who was about 11 years old who had been immersed in baseball in the U.S. And so they were baseball crazy. Baseball wasn't, to my knowledge, a thing in El Salvador. And it was all soccer. And so, but very quickly it caught on. And I fell in love with the game of baseball. We had to form a team. We discovered that there was a baseball community in El Salvador, just like the rest of Central America. You probably know Nicaragua and Panama. But so started to play baseball, really loved it. We all got pretty good. Several of us made it to the national under-18 baseball team and had a wonderful time. So since we're close to where Memorial Stadium once was and down the street from Johns Hopkins, I'll tell you that when I was a junior in high school, needed to pick a college, and in those days we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all the fancy things these days. My daughter, for instance, applied to 20 universities. It wasn't like that. We had one guy in our counseling office, and I was an Orioles fan. My dad was an Orioles fan, so I loved the Orioles. But so I looked in the guide, and at the front it said most selective, Johns Hopkins University. At the same time, I had a Rand McNally road atlas, and looked around Memorial Stadium. Oh, Johns Hopkins is right by Memorial Stadium. That's my choice. So that's how I picked my college trajectory. I was kind of a walk-on at Hopkins. I was unknown, so it was a struggle, especially in those days. Our coach, who's still the coach there, Bob Babb, he was starting out, but he was also an assistant football coach. And so the football players somehow, they had their say. And at the same time, I noticed, just as an aside, that working out in those days, there was no such thing as working out for baseball. It was all lifting weights and all the heavy stuff. So the football players were like this. And so it was very frustrating for me. But my senior year, I was okay. I kind of held my own. But just to give you an idea, we were pretty good. We were 21-6 my senior year. And so a reporter for the Baltimore Sun, Ben by, and he wrote an article about us. And the headline was something like, "At Johns Hopkins, it's brains over brawn." So, but I took that as a great thing, because, and I was mentioned as a defensive specialist. Okay, and that's kind of a preview of where I'm going. So after I graduated, I played softball. I played in the men's senior baseball league when I lived in Boston, and that was fun. Bill Lee played in that league, by the way, so it was pretty competitive and a lot of fun. Moved back to Maryland and was raising a family. My son was really into baseball. He was kind of has a photographic memory, so that was fun. Liked the Suns, was a very casual fan. I remember going to see Ruth when he played with the Suns. He was 16-4 that year. I had to look it up, but he was like 13-1 or 13-0 when we went to see him, and he lost the game we went to see him. So, I was there, but not really that into it. So, I belonged to Rotary in those days, to Rotary Club, and the general manager of the Suns was a guy named Kurt Landis, who is still the general manager now of the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. And he started the franchise up there. He's done a great job. So he was a pretty cool guy. And one day, I think it was maybe this time of year, January, I saw him at the luncheon, and I said, "Kurt, the strangest thing happened last night. I had a dream that I was shagging for the Suns, and that was the secret to my happiness." And I was really afraid of what he was going to say, but he looked at me and he said, "We can arrange that." He said, wait a minute, there's a liability issue. He said, "Oh no, we'll just employ you." So that started this adventure. And it was, to this day, I don't know what Kurt was thinking. At one point he said, "Well, teams have shaggers," but I really haven't fact-checked that. I don't think there's an association of team shaggers or anything like that. And I never encountered any other shaggers in all of my travels. So I was kind of in shape, but not in great shape. So I started working out, and the first day of the season came. I don't remember exactly how things went, but I think it was probably very harrowing. The great thing was that year, the team had a pretty laid-back coaching staff, really laid-back. I think of them as like the guys from MASH. Mike Ramsey was the manager. I think he played for the Cardinals at one point. Bob Stanley, Steve, was the pitching coach. And a guy named Willie Avalez was the hitting coach. As I remember, he had been a stockbroker at some point, and they pulled him in to coach as well. We were with the San Francisco Giants of all teams during those years. We had been with the Blue Jays for many years, and then the Giants. And so those guys kind of let me do my thing and let me roam the outfield and shag. But the important thing is I kind of sewed myself into the fabric of the team and became kind of like a den father, but not so much a father, brother, father, something in between. It was a very interesting relationship. And so then, by the time it got to be late July, early August, it was a Sunday game. I was coming in, we had a rare Sunday morning batting practice. I was coming off the field, ready to hit the shower, and then maybe go home for a little while and come back to watch the game. And Willie drew me over and he said, "Hey, Shaq." Oh, and also, I don't remember how this happened, but everybody in baseball has a nickname. And so, of course, my nickname became Shag. And so Willie said, "What are you doing later?" And I said, "I don't think I'm doing much of anything." He said, "Great, suit up, you're going to be coaching first base." So I coached first base for the last third of the season. And I'm going to take a pause there because I'm going to kind of rewind, give you some stories and some pictorials of where you heard Ryan talk about Municipal Stadium in Hagerstown. let's show a few. So this is the aerial view of Municipal Stadium. It was very intimate. It's very old, was very old. I think it was built in about 1932. So at one point it was one of the oldest ballparks in the US. And one of the things about it is that it had this gigantic, this 26-foot high center field wall, because it was only about 375 feet from home plate to the base of the wall. And also another really cool thing, the home plate, the closest seats behind home plate were 39 feet from home plate. If you build a new ballpark today, I think the current standards are like 60 feet. So we were sitting right in the middle of the action. I used to joke that when there was a close play at home plate and the player slid, you were wiping the dust off of your clothes because it was that close. You could talk to the umpire and he would talk back. So let's go to the next slide. See what else. Oh, if you could go back, let me just show you one more cool thing that I love. So this was the time of day when there was batting practice, when this photo was taken. You can see the players milling around. Of course, all the players love to mill in right field because it was closest to the clubhouse. And the visiting team bus just pulled up. So that's my favorite part of the day. There's the front. How many of you have been to Municipal Stadium? Oh, great. So you know, especially people who are used to going to the major league ballparks, when they would come to Hagerstown, I loved hearing their reaction because they'd be like, I can reach out and touch the players. This is amazing. What a great experience for baseball fans. There's the view from the left field line. You can see a lot of bleachers, which wasn't great for the business of baseball. We'll talk about that more. Although, when I became an owner, we bought some of the old seats from Camden Yards that they were recycling and put them behind home plate because those had been bleachers as well. There's one of my favorite parts. That's where we would warm up, play catch, looking down the right field line. And the bullpen is right down there in the right field corner. Another view, you can see that's a good view of the center field wall, my arch nemesis. The wall moved me, but I never managed to move the wall. We'll talk about that. Go ahead. View from behind home plate. For some reason, in the later years, the front office people that would visit from the Nationals like to sit right there. I could never figure that out because of those two columns. There were lots of unobstructed seats in the ballpark, but those weren't among them. But at least they were behind home plate. Just another view of the ballpark, and you can see the intimacy there. Oh, and also the press box on top. And one of my favorite places to sit, if you see there's a little bench on the left there. And if you put that in Camden Yards, you'd probably be sitting like almost on top of home plate. So I would go up there, get dinner, sit there and eat. The only thing you had to be careful of is that the foul balls would whiz by there. It was really crazy. There were lots of dent marks on that press box. But it was a wonderful place to sit and enjoy a great summer evening watching the ball game from a unique perspective. Willie Mays had his first professional at bat in Hagerstown as a visitor. It wasn't a great experience for him because those were days of segregation. Hagerstown was heavily segregated. Willie couldn't stay with the rest of his team, and he really did not like the experience. And I think he swore he would never come back or something like that. But at one point, the mayor of Hagerstown made peace with him, and so he came back. There was a big ceremony, and so that was that. So there's Willie at the ballpark.
That was a great game. That was a great effort by Hagerstown.
There's the first year that I was shagging for the team. We had an electronic scoreboard. It had a crawler along the bottom, but it kept failing. And so they would find spare parts that they would scavenge, and until the point where it totally failed. And we still had a couple of months of the season left. So that season, and the city said, you know what, we're not going to replace it. The city owned the ballpark. They said, too bad. And so for that, oh, did somebody notice the math on the scoreboard? That's why I put that picture up there. Yeah. Hagerstown math. Always good to give the home team an extra run. Come on. That's home field advantage right there. So for the last 2 months of that season, we had no scoreboard. If you wanted to know what the score was, if you have a little transistor radio, at least in those days we were broadcasting the game. And so a Little League park had more information available to the people watching than we did. So Kurt Landis figured that out and said, well, you know what, we're just gonna, this was after the season, he said we're just gonna make a Fenway-style scoreboard. So that's what we had until the very end. There's a home team dugout. It's very unique because you can sit and you can stand there and talk to the players and the manager, and it was very, very close. And so, and I'll tell you some fun anecdotes about that in a second. There's another view. That fence didn't go up right away. For many years, there was no fence there. So you can imagine how hairy it was to be sitting in that little dugout right in the sweet spot for foul balls from the batters. There's Bryce. Bryce started his career in Hagerstown, his pro career in Hagerstown. On the bottom left, some of you may remember there was an incident where he was having it out with the opposing pitcher, and he hit a home run, and as he was crossing the plate, he turned to the pitcher and blew a kiss. So he was, pretty brash. He was 17 going on 18, I think, maybe 18, when he played in Hagerstown. Pretty young guy. I'll talk more about Bryce in a moment. This was a flood we had, can't remember the year, maybe 2006. The team was on the road, but the clubhouse flooded up to probably about this level. So it was a pretty big mess, and managed to clean it up, but that was part of the stigma associated with the ballpark after that. And here's the little clubhouse that Ryan mentioned earlier. Very, very close quarters. You really had to learn to get along with your teammates well in a clubhouse like that. That's kind of one branch, but there really isn't a whole. You get the picture if you see what see this angle of the ballpark of the clubhouse. And there's just another shot. There's a beer garden. There was a beer garden down the left field line. We had one year we had I think it was 2011. There was a storm that came in that knocked down the light pole you see there, came straight across the beer garden roof, the structure, onto left field. So we had to cancel 3 or 4 games until we got that all straightened up. Denard Spahn with me, and he was a really good guy. He's a guy that the way I describe him is that he was a Mack truck where they were trying to get the performance of a Porsche out of him. So he was constantly injured, and he kept coming to Hagerstown for rehab. It was kind of bad. I remember one time I was about 55 years old, I guess, when this picture was taken. And I walked into the clubhouse, and he was sitting there, and he said, "I'm never going to be able to run around like you do when I'm your age." And it was kind of a lament, because he knew that he had a pretty big problem. So we had a really good time. As I said, I sewed myself into the fabric of the team. And the team took me seriously. The good thing about me was I wasn't like pro potential, like somebody trying to prove a point, and I wasn't bad. So if I made a good play, everybody really loved it because it was like, wow, look what Shag just did. Or if I dropped the ball, everybody would ride me because they're like, Shag, you gotta do better. So, and I would get rated. I would come off the field. They said, you did really well. You were all over the place, Shag. That was really good today. Or, come on, Shag. pull yourself out of it. So it was a fun, challenging experience for me. Also because I could speak Spanish, I'm fluent in Spanish, the Dominican players and the Venezuelans and the other Latino players really would cling to me because this was new to them. Hagerstown, at that level in South Atlantic League, low A, was their first full season. So this was all kind of new. And so we became really close-knit, and I would help them out with whatever they needed. They would send money home, and a lot of them, their families came from really, really modest means. And so I remember one time a player came to me and he said, "Shag, can you lend me $5? I haven't eaten in 2 days." And that was really kind of the reality. The reality of minor league baseball, not so long ago, was harsh. And in some cases, the players had they had a hard choice because they wanted to send money home, but they also had to make sure that they were okay. But until recently, and I noticed this a long time ago, I said, this is really funny. The players that are eating, they're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and junk, and these teams are investing so much in them. This doesn't make sense to me. So with the Dominican players, by the way, I would wire a lot of funds back to the Dominican Republic. They would give me the cash, and I would go over to the local supermarket. I'm sure that some people thought I was doing some kind of drug deals because I was always there wiring money to Latin America. Early on, there was one incident that really stayed with me. The Dominican players became really alarmed because they felt that they couldn't turn their backs on what was going on, and specifically their bats. Because what was happening was that somebody would, if they left their bat on the ground, somebody would break their bat. And given all the time that I was there, the incidents, the American players and the Latino players got along really well, as far as I could tell. But sometimes, some of the things that we see in society are reflected inside of that clubhouse. Just about everything. It was a microcosm of society. I hated rainouts, of course, because I felt that, every game was precious to me. And even if it was good enough for the game to be played, if the grass was even a little bit wet, they would bang batting practice. And some people like to tease me. If I would walk into the clubhouse, if it was borderline, they'd go, "Shag, no BP today." Because they wanted to see my reaction, because it was like they told me that my dog died or something like that. It was just a horrible reaction. Another thing that was kind of that was a reality was that the Latino players, we started in early April. That was really their first taste of cold weather, because if they played in rookie ball, that started in June. And so being in Hagerstown was the first time they had cold weather, and it was a big adjustment. I remember one time a pitcher was having a really hard time out there on the mound, and he kind of came to the side of the dugout, and he told me in Spanish, "I can't feel my fingertips." Well, I learned early on that the best way to become a friend of the ball players was to go to Dick's Sporting Good and buy a huge bag of those hand warmers, the chemical hand warmers. So I always carried those in my jacket, and I gave him a couple of hand warmers. And once his fingertips warmed up, it was night and day for him, and he thanked me for helping him out there. Also, the Latino players prayed for snow because they'd never seen snow. They wanted to see snow. A couple of times they'd see flurries, and that was a big thing for them. As a former Hopkins guy, and we took a lot of pride in sign stealing. Legal sign stealing. And so I kind of took that with me to I was always thinking about how to get the edge, and got pretty good at sign stealing. In fact, one time there was one of our starting pitcher was having a really hard time, and he had runners on first and third, and when the pitching coach went out to talk to him, I was watching the signs, And I told Tony Tarasco was our hitting coach. We became really close friends to this day, if you remember Tarasco, former Oriole, among other teams. And I said, T, he's going to steal. You know, of course, I'm behind the dugout. And so Tony looked at me and he goes, first pitch? No way, no. I'm going, he's going to steal. So Tarasco trusted me enough to call for a pitch out. And sure enough, the runner tried to steal, was promptly thrown out. And the pitcher became aware, after the game, the pitcher became aware that I called that in, and he went out of his way to thank me because he said, I was in a tough jam and you really helped me out there. So another thing I remember very fondly is that if you remember the catcher Sandy Leone, he became really well known with the Red Sox catcher. So first of all, I was called into the manager's office one day and was asked to tell Sandy that he was going to, one day he would be a major league catcher. And that was really special to be able to tell this young guy that. The other cool thing is that I took him to his very first Major League Baseball game. He hadn't even seen the outside of a Major League ballpark. So we went down to the Nationals, watched the game. He went down to the dugout after, and a couple players took him into the clubhouse and all. So it was really, for me, it was gratifying to see his trajectory and how he ascended and ultimately became a World Series champion with the Red Sox. I also got to go to spring training as Shagger, and that was fun. One year was Bryce Harper's. It was Harp's first season, and I remember on the first day, Tony Tarasco had the outfielders out, and he was hitting fly balls to them, and I was kind of in the middle. I was catching the balls from them. So the first ball, Harp caught. He looked at me kind of funny, and then he threw the most wicked knuckleball you can imagine. And it went about 4 feet in front of me. And luckily, in part luck, in part because the turf down there was so beautiful, I was able to scoop it up. And he just looked at me and goes, okay. And to me, that was like, okay, you're legit. And so after that, Harp and I were pretty good. But he kind of wanted to, it was a weird way of testing me. Later on, Harp was with us through July 4th of the year that he was in Hagerstown. And then he moved up pretty quickly. And I would go around when our team was on the road. I would go to Harrisburg. If Potomac was playing in Frederick, I'd go shag in Frederick. Even go up to Lehigh. And I went on the road with the team, with the Harrisburg team to Reading. And they were finishing up, they were completing a game from before that had been suspended. And so Harper, it was extra innings, and Harper slid into home plate to win the game, but he slid in so hard that he shredded his pants and broke his belt. And as it turns out, I was in the dugout for the game. I'd been invited to be in the dugout. And so I don't know if I offered, maybe not the kind of thing you offer to do, to change pants. But anyway, we exchanged pants, and so I had to wear Harper's shredded pants and messed up belt for the rest of the game. There was a collision at home plate. I remember it was my 50th birthday, so I was in Salisbury, shagging with the team on the road, and Steven Souza Jr. was with us. If you remember Steven Souza, he played for the Diamondbacks a long time, I think for Seattle. But anyway, he had a collision at home with the catcher. And the catcher, you saw him just hit the ground. I was reminded of this with the player that had the horrible incident for the Bills this season. And it was just like he went to sleep. And it freaked everybody out. Our players were crying. It was the worst thing you ever saw. The ambulance came on the field. The guy was out for probably 20 minutes. He was carted off. Fortunately, he was okay. I think it broke his jaw. And he came back later I looked him up the other week to check. He did try to come back, but that was basically his last season. So, you know, horrible things happen, and you see the human side of baseball players when, you know, both teams are, you know, openly weeping on the field. What else there were so many cool things that we had pitchers batting practice. That was my favorite. Every now and then the pitchers would get to bat. Probably never more because you know, pitchers don't have to bat anymore. And so that I would get to hit. And what would happen, the players would they'd pick sides. And of course, I was the last guy picked. And by the way, every pitcher thinks that he's Babe Ruth. So I got picked last. And I would get up there and I'd hit my line drive, single. And so by the second or third time that the pitcher's BP was held, I was the first pick because they knew that I would get my hits and get on. One time, and there's a lot at stake, because the team that loses has to do extra chores around the clubhouse and around the field. So I hit a walk-off and was hoisted on the player's shoulders. It was a pretty amazing feeling for me. So there were lots of things that happened over the years, but let me finish up by telling you about that first season, which was kind of an interesting. One more quick anecdote. Baseball players have eyes in the back of their heads. I don't know if you realize this, but when they're facing the field, they're really scanning the stands looking for attractive women. And I was their go-to guy. So if a guy saw a woman that he wanted to, or young lady that he wanted to get to know better, I would go to the side of the dugout and he'd hand me a baseball with his phone number on it. And I was to go and deliver it to the girl. But I like to have fun with it. So, he'd be watching out of the corner of his eye, and I would wander around, and I'd say, and I go behind the girl, and I go to the absolute wrong girl. I'd say, this one? No. This one? No. So I'd have fun with it. One time, a very attractive young woman walked into the ballpark. She kind of sucked the air out of the whole ballpark. And all the players, they were just all jittery. They were like, who's that girl? Who's that girl? And they were watching, checking her out. So of course, I'm the designated checker-outer. So I go up and I say, hey, how you doing? Is this your first time? And she said, yeah, I'm here with the new guy that came in today that got called up. And so I'm turning to the players, I'm going, stop it, guys, because there's a code of honor. You don't mess with, another team member's girl. And so they quickly realized that she was not someone to be flirting with. So anyway, that first season, I was coaching first base. We were winning. We didn't win every game, but we were winning more. And first base coach, you kind of learn, is a weird place to be. First of all, I was told very politely, Shag, if you need to tell me back, if I'm relying on you to say back, then I'm out. I'm done. So there's no point. Also, there's no point in yelling at the player to come on when he's trying to run out a ground ball. One of the players got a little bit upset with me, but we made up for it. He said, do you really think that we're not running as hard as we can down first base, that you have to yell at us? But anyway, nonetheless, I think that things were really clicking, and but the manager and coaches, as laid back as they were, they knew to kind of stay low on the radar with the front office, with the Giants front office. They knew that this front office especially, didn't have much of a sense of humor like they did, and there was especially the maybe director of player development. His name was Bobby Evans. I saw him around a couple of times, tried to talk to him. He was a little bit cold. So whenever front office people were around, they wouldn't let me coach. I could be in the dugout, but I couldn't coach first base. So just to kind of stay on the down low. So the local newspaper wanted to do a story. Oh yeah, I used to do golf tournaments for the guys. That was fun because I got paid to shag, and so I would use the money. Oh, there's somebody we know, with the proud father looking on. The father saying, "Gee, I wish I could play pro baseball one day." And so let's keep going, and I'll tell more of the story. There I am with Latino Mafia. There's Tony Tarasco on the left, my good friend. Oh, this story, sorry, I have to interject this. My son had a new camera, Canon Rebel, and one Sunday morning he appeared, he walked through the front office, came in, I made this play, he went, caught the play, walked out, and never came back. So that was the only time any of my family members ever saw me shagging in 17 years. And they thought that's all I did all day. There's my red badge of courage. I loved smacking into fences, walls, turf, everything. Wasn't the best thing to do, but I loved it. You can keep going, you can get rid of that one. Okay, this is a video. If you scan, let's go back. There, yeah. Okay, this is the bat boy on the right. It was a foot race. The team was taking bets. It was taken very seriously. And it was about 50-50 whether it was the 16-year-old bat boy or me that was going to win this race. And the bat boy won. So, but everybody had a great time, and that's what really counted. There's Sandy Leone. Jonathan Solano, you may remember him. One time I was called into the manager's office, and the front office, this was with the Nationals. Doug Harris was the player development. And they said, Shag, very solemnly, they said, we're going to have to give you your release. Sorry, we're going to have to let you go. And so they signed that. So I found a player contract online, another one for the opposing team. I think they were the Rockies. And I came back a few minutes later and said, those guys just signed me up. So anyway, they had a good time with me. There's Michael Martinez making the last out of the World Series a few years ago. He was a Hagerstown guy. So this article came out. And the story is that it went all around professional baseball, all the way up to the commissioner's office. And the question is, what is going on in Hagerstown? Who is this guy coaching first base and in the dugout? And so the next day, Kurt Landis called me into his office. Oh, and in the meantime, that morning I remember, we won the game. I was playing golf with the starting pitcher. I had this great article. The winning pitcher was playing golf. We were on top of the world. In the afternoon, I go up into the ballpark, into the front office. Kurt called me in and he said, sorry, but you're not going to be able to coach first base anymore because all hell broke loose. And I said, that's fine. I didn't ask to coach first base. No problem. He said, no problem? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Great. So I went out to shag. And the next day, he called me back into his office and he said, the front office of the Giants said that you can't shag either. And I'm like, oh, okay, well that's sad. So, but I said, you know what, it's no big deal. This is the last week of the season. We only have like 2 home games left, who cares? So I went back to the clubhouse. I had my own locker. I started packing my stuff. And the other players came around and they go, Shag, what's going on? I said, well, they let me, they told me I can't shag anymore. They're like, Shag's been let go. Shag's been let go. And it went all over the place. I'm thinking, don't worry, guys, come on, don't worry about it. So I took my stuff, left, called my family, and said, let's go out to dinner. Let's kind of forget about it. It was kind of a bummer. And so maybe at the end of dinner, I told my son, let's go out to the car and see how the game is going. So we went out, turned on the radio. The Suns were losing 16-0. I don't know if it had anything to do with me or not, but I said, come on, we better get over to the ballpark and stop the bleeding. So we went over, and I think they ended up losing 18-2. But nonetheless, that experience, even though it was the end of the season, I survived. I came back for another 16 years with the Mets and the Nationals, and had a lot of other wonderful experiences. Let's see what else we have to show real quick. There I am coaching first base. Had a couple of baseball cards. You can go on eBay. I think that usually you can buy these on eBay. Sometimes I'm packaged up with someone who actually is worth something. So I don't have time to tell the whole story of even my ownership. Very quickly, I got to know the company that owned the Suns, and in 2009, the representative came over to me and he said, "Hey Tony, I know that you love the Suns, you love the community. Why don't you put together a group and buy the team?" And so that's what I did. I wasn't the majority owner. I had a majority owner who, like most people who come into baseball, think that whatever got them to be made them successful in whatever business they were in, translates to baseball, and it doesn't. I've been around the game long enough, just watching and knowing my place, to know that baseball, minor league baseball, is about family entertainment. It's about having a good time, and it's about selling beers and hot dogs. And so it didn't go too well with a majority owner that didn't know what he was doing but wanted to micromanage. So I just kind of laid back and said, look, I'm the shagger. I made it a point to tell the players at the beginning of the season, yes, I am an owner, but I'm the shagger who became an owner, not the owner who became the shagger. And to me, that was really important. I never wanted a player to think that, oh, that guy's out there shagging just because he owns the team. I wanted them to know that I felt at least that I somehow earned it, and it wasn't something that I was doing. I wanted to be of help to them as well. So there I was. There was a seat auction. I had to pay for a couple of seats, which was sad. This is the last. This was the demolition of the ballpark. The city tore down the ballpark pretty quickly. We have a city council guy who's a big soccer fan, and he made no secret that he wants that place to be a place for indoor soccer, not for baseball. We do have a lot of land in our part of Maryland, so he was fixated on that and had the place demolished. Now the city realizes that in order to have that indoor soccer place, they somehow need to conjure up $22 million. So I hope I never go down that road again. Even if I'm in the back of an ambulance, I will get up and tell them to go around another road, because I can't bear the sight of the ballpark, seeing an empty field where my beloved ballpark once stood. So that's kind of, and it hurts me when I think that of all things on my watch, we lost the Hagerstown Suns. But I know that there were a lot of things out of my control, and that the ballpark itself was a liability. The major league contraction and realignment was the final straw, and we were an easy target for the list just to take away. So we are going to get an Atlantic League team next year. The Maryland Stadium Authority has stepped up with a considerable amount of funding for that, over $60 million. So let's see can't remember what comes after this. Is that it? Okay. So that's my story. It's a story about a lot of experiences that I've had, but most importantly, it's about these people that are part of my life, that I consider to be part of my family, and that I hold very close to my heart. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share the story with you.
Kind of a very specific question based on, you have a big, broad spectrum of subject matter, but one thing struck me when you were talking about the Dominican players whose backs were being broken when they left them. Was it their own teammates breaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very isolated.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was early in my time, so I was concerned that, oh wow, is this a thing? But as far as I know, it wasn't as much a thing, as much as I would have as I feared.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, the players, of course, you have the Latino players over here in this part of the clubhouse. And at first, I would talk to managers and I'd say, would it be nice, at first I said, would it be nice to sort of assign them so that they're mixed? But then I realized that they had their own, the Latino players had their own support system as well. So it was kind of a mixed bag. It wasn't all good to just try to get them to assimilate in the clubhouse in the way that I thought.
Yeah, a little follow-up to that. Minor league baseball is about a couple of different things. One of them being the players wanting to advance to the majors, which might supersede the success of the team itself.
Yes.
Do you think there was some of that attitude with regard to that incident? Guys are...
Yeah. I mean, one time, I remember a pitcher was throwing a no-hitter, and another pitcher, I was in the bullpen, and another pitcher, I heard him under his breath saying, get a hit to the other team.
Wow. Yeah.
So, complex dynamics going on. So, for whatever, for a lot of reasons. Yep. We could talk about it all day. Yes. Any other?
I remember a couple of years ago, there was a number of years ago, a write-up about the food stands in Hagerstown, noting that it was pretty unique for different than the ordinary run of.
Yeah, we tried a lot of different things. At one point, we had a vegetarian stand that was it was rated the best in minor league baseball. So we tried things, and the food stands weren't set up for quick service, and that was one of the problems. Once you get I figured about 1,400 people, then the infrastructure couldn't support. It would just take too long, then people would stop going to get food. So, the revenue would go down, and but we brought in outside vendors. We tried a bunch of different things to try to make a good experience. Yeah, thank you.
Two questions. First is, what exactly did you do as a first base coach? Just balance out the field?
Sometimes it felt that way. Well, as you can see from the photograph, the usual thing that you see first basemen do, first base coaches, and I coached first base for Hopkins when I was a grad student too, so I had some experience reminding the player of the situation, and I never got beef from the players for that. It's like, if you don't think I know how many outs there are, that seems to be accepted. How many outs, and foul fly, tag up, and all the kinds of things that first base coaches tell their players. So I was kind of active there, but I think what the players didn't want too much of was that college enthusiasm that I tended to bring with me, until I kind of figured it out that you had to be a little bit more reserved than that. So, but I think that even telling a player to stretch a single into a double, that's pretty much on the player. It's rare for a player to say, "Gee, thanks for telling me to go to second base. I had no clue." Because usually the field, the play is right in front of them, and it's on them. So, to me, it felt like it was a chemistry thing, and I think that the players trusted me. Throughout my time as a shagger, I felt that I was in a unique position. I wasn't part of the establishment, but I wasn't one of the players either. So the players would come to me, and sometimes they just tell me, "Shag, I hurt so badly," but they couldn't tell the coaches. They didn't want to get benched, and they didn't want to be labeled as a hurt player. So they would play through, but they were hurting. Or they'd just say, "I'm homesick." They just wanted somebody to talk to. Or, "I miss my girlfriend." Sometimes they'd say, "Shag, I know that you're in business and you do different things. I know that I'm not going to be doing this forever. Probably not going to be doing this past this year. Do you think I'd be good at sales? Do you think I'd be good at they'd talk to me." And so, to me, that was probably the most important thing, was establishing that rapport with the players. And being first base coach was an extension of that, I suppose. Yeah.
Just a memory I have. I grew up in Cleveland. The best mustard ever at a ballpark was Burton's ballpark mustard, which was his Mrs. David in Cleveland.
Okay.
So, going back 15 years ago, I was stopping for the first time playing the ball fire. And I hear over the TV, that you talked about, I hear over the PA system, get your Workman's ballpark mustard with your hot dog. I'm going, as far as I know, that was never available anywhere outside.
Wow. That I don't remember.
And that was the only time, the next year it wasn't there. I don't know if you were there at the time.
I probably had nothing to do with that. Burton's ought to keep that in mind though when I'm looking for mustard.
Make sure he knows that.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You came on board with Toronto or
With San Francisco.
San Francisco?
Yeah.
Now, had there been, maybe you from other people, conversations with others, but there was a long history of Hagerstown being an Orioles
Yeah.
minor league team. And did the community hiccup a little bit? You know, if they could go to Toronto initially?
It was Baltimore for a lot of years, but it was complicated because it started out as AA, Baltimore. In the first year, it's 81, Grady Little was the manager, by the way. It was an unaffiliated, it was kind of a, I can't remember what they called it, a bunch of teams, and then it became the Orioles. And then AA moved to Bowie, and High A, Hagerstown was High A for a number of years.
Yeah.
And then that team moved to Frederick. And then Myrtle Beach, I believe, moved up to Low A. And that may be how we inherited the name of the Suns, but I can't quite remember at this point. So it's a complicated history, and you know, as was mentioned earlier, the history of baseball in Hagerstown is very, very rich, to say the least. But yeah, there are people that go to ballparks, minor league ballparks, for a lot of different reasons. The majority go for just entertainment. They don't care, you know, who's playing as long as they have a good time. There's hardcore baseball, and I think that through a number of factors, if you don't have a good ballpark, you get hardcore baseball players, not many people just going, you know, like, I used as a litmus test, would my son take his girlfriend for a night out at the Hagerstown Suns ballpark? The answer is no. So, or would a group of business people say, hey, after our business meeting today, let's go do something fun, let's go to the baseball game in Hagerstown? Unlikely. So, you have families, and I loved seeing, on a summer evening, seeing the families there, and kids running around having a good time, because frankly, there aren't a lot of things anymore for families to do together. Everybody's doing their own thing in their room, video games, streaming, whatever. So, you know, to me, my editorial, you know, to shrink minor league baseball across the United States the way it's being done, there's a huge loss to dozens of communities for that reason.
I think that caused a renaissance or a kind of spur the growth of independent league.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're moving, as we speak, they're moving into abandoned affiliated team ballparks. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you so much.